Just for people who don't know, I'd like to set this up instead of just asking this question directly. Can you first tell me what is a groom of the stool, and also how much you would need to be paid yearly to actually take on that job?
Okay, so the groom of the stool was a position in the Tudor court. The role was to help the king go to the toilet. So clean him up afterwards, make sure all his physiological needs are attended to. And among other things, you'd also get to help with his finances and mediate between him and the court. But the main bit of the role, and the famous bit that we know about now, is that, yeah, you have to be with him in the toilet. And for Henry VIII, who the groom of the stool that I've focused on in the book, was Henry VIII's deputy groom of the stool, actually. He wasn't even the main one. And Henry VIII, at this time in his life, didn't have great digestion or basic health. So being his toilet attendant then was a pretty gross job. Saying that, it was also hugely sought after, because what it meant being the toilet attendant is you got to spend more time with the king than anyone else. Probably more than any of his wives. And you got to sit by him for hours on end and influence his decisions. So if he was mulling over something he had to do, you actually had a position of great influence if you were sat next to him alone. So people really wanted the job. I don't think I'd want it. It sounds pretty gross, especially to be Henry VIII. But you could do a lot if you were groom of the stool. I think I want at least $1 million in today's money. Maybe they all got gifts of palaces and castles, so that would be pretty good, and that might make up for the smell and the general grossness of the job.
The double whammy of the actual job and with Henry VIII, I'm thinking $2 million, and I'd have to have a really good benefits package and a lot of paid time off. You're
risking getting your head cut off too. He was a pretty grumpy man then and was prone to making irrational decisions. So yeah, I think $2 million is, I've agreed to do it for $1 million, so that was a mistake.
Well, especially with Henry VIII, I feel like we don't give him enough credit for being as big a jerk as he was. I want to use a stronger language, but this is all for the kids talking about the grooms of the stool. But he's one of my favorite historical people to go back and be like, he really sucked. We get too focused on the wives, and we kind of forget that in a lot of ways he just sucked. And then he gets really old and beat up, and then you're a groom of the stool, and you're just sitting there staring at this angry, ugly old man waiting for him to go potty. I'm glad that you could get your mind around it and write a chapter about it, but goodness gracious. It's a little bit of like a horror chapter. You have a little bit of horror in your book. I think you've really nailed every genre from here to the end.
Thank you. No, a lot of it is quite horrific, and you're right. We don't give him enough credit for being a horrible, horrible man. And he definitely had a lot of issues to work through, but it doesn't excuse him being such a bad guy.